what helped you feel your pain? Like what practices and what was it to meet your pain?
So it's not very exciting, but it really isn't. It's nothing.
Go on, bore us.
Yes. It was just boring Aussie talking shit about pain.
Everyone just fast forward the podcast for the next 10 minutes. Stefanos puts us all to sleep.
Yeah,
no, I want to know. I can't imagine this is going to be boring no matter what it is.
It's very simple though, but I want to touch on two parts. So I touched on this previously around men and solitude and then being able to be supported. So firstly, I had tremendous support throughout various stages of this process where, I was in therapy twice a week. I was working with energy healers. I was working with shamans. I was working with somatic coaches and nervous system trauma specialists. So I was all in. I was spending thousands of dollars a week of money that I didn't have. I was using my credit card. That's why I said I nearly went bankrupt. Yeah. So I really, really committed to this process.
Gotta be careful with those shamans and the credit card usage,
Very, very careful.
Buyer beware. And shit works. It actually fucking works.
Absolutely. And I was very committed. And the people that I was attracting, I felt very blessed that were very, very supportive of what I needed in that moment. And there was a lot of times, many times where I was really by myself and I needed to be. I needed to be in solitude. I needed to be with my own stuff without relying on someone else. But when it got too much to the point where I really contemplated suicide many, many times and was very close to being in that space and literally like losing my mind. I would wake up in sweats in the middle of the night, having night terrors and looking in the mirror and seeing demons. And I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't on any mind-altering substances at all, especially during that time. So I needed support. I needed to know what it felt like to not be judged, to not be shamed, to be met with compassion, to be met with love, and to be able to co-regulate in the presence of someone else, someone else's nervous system that was healthy, that was grounded, that was safe, and that had done their work. And my unconscious self needed to feel that in order to say, oh, that exists. I can be that. And when we're talking about feeling pain, I spent hours by myself on the lounge room floor screaming and crying and not knowing when it was going to end and being a blubbering mess and snot and tears and shit coming out of everywhere and not eating and sometimes eating, sometimes not. And I just stayed with my stuff. Now, some of you out there may be thinking, well, how long do you stay with your stuff for? It's a great question, right? Until you can't stay with it any longer. I had to, and this is where discipline was really important. And I lent into the times where, because I was an athlete, I still consider myself an athlete, but I was a competitive athlete in various sports, and I'd taken myself to some really painful places. Because what I didn't mention earlier was I also used exercise and competition as a distraction, as an avoidance. Yeah. Right? Especially if I was winning, I'd be getting accolades as well. And I'd win a lot. I was at least top 2, top 3 in my state, in the country. I was doing really well, So I had that validation too. And so, but I pushed myself.
I like to say I built an empire with my daddy issues,
You did. In part. And it works until it doesn't anymore. Totally. Yeah, that's right. And you go to the next level. But you needed that. And that's, maybe a conversation for another time in terms of, I don't like to, I never take people, when I'm working with a client, I never say to them, oh, this is great. This has happened for you and it's happened for a reason. Never. That's an effect that happens way later. In the moment, it's all about safety in the body. Because so many of us are disassociated from our bodies because we didn't want to feel the pain that was inflicted on our bodies, on our minds, on our souls when that happens. So we dissociate, we check out. So it's about coming back into the body in really safe ways. And so when I can't feel anymore, I go for a walk. I get into the ocean. I put myself in nature. I watch something funny. I was putting some love back into my body. Now it was very forced because I didn't love myself. So I had to force myself, but I knew that if I didn't, again, something beyond my intellectual comprehension was telling me, if you don't do this, you can feel all the pain you want, but it'll be too much and you'll kill yourself and you'll die. So if you want that, keep going. Otherwise, put that fucking weight vest on and go for a 5-hour walk. So I did. And the only staple that I had in my life was my training. I was so accustomed to it, right? I'd been doing it for years, well over a decade, and it was also my addiction. So it was also a way that I demonstrated some level of value and worth. So I kept that. And that's not a balance, but that outlet, if you like, kept me coming back to being able to feel what I needed to feel. And then after a period of time, years, the pain wasn't as intense anymore. The insights were there. I felt more whole, felt more connected. During that time, I'd engaged in many different practices as well. Again, I mentioned celibacy. I mentioned my relationship to sex, to sexuality, to women, to the feminine. I'd gone deep into tantra. I'd gone deep into masculine, feminine dynamics and polarity. I'd gone deep into inner child work and parts therapy. And my background's in psychology. But bullshit, so what? Big deal, right? So many psychologists, so many therapists, so many people in that field get into that because they think, this is true for me, and I've seen this in so many, they think by helping others, they're helping themselves. But unless they're deliberate about that and they're actually doing their work on themselves for themselves, they ain't doing shit. I had to get past that. I knew a lot, but I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and let's break that down for anyone listening who wants to meet their pain, right? Like what you're talking about is to stay in what's called your window of tolerance, right? Like your nervous system has a certain amount of intensity that it can feel and stay grounded and present and safe. And what that means is if I'm going to feel pain, somatic pain, but it could be anything. It could be rage, it could be sadness, it could be a memory from the past. There is so much that I can handle before I overwhelm myself and get anxious or super freaked out or go into like a heightened state of activation that's not healthy, right? Or I just shut down. I go into freeze. So it's basically overwhelm or shut down.
Yeah.
And so my nervous system is such that like it will throw itself into overwhelm. I'll become so overwhelmed by my pain, so overwhelmed by intensity, it's hard to function. And for other people, it's more of a freeze. It's lethargy, it's depression, it's a deep, deep, deep heaviness, right? That's a sign that your system is overwhelmed by whatever it is that you're feeling. And so, what a healthy training is to do is to actually train yourself, and a good therapist, a good coach will work with you on this. And we train our coaches in this to be able to feel just to your edge.
It's exactly what we do in our coaching institute as well.
Because feeling to your edge and then learning to meet your edge with the consciousness and presence of love, right? And can you go to your edge and still be here in your body and still be in the groundedness of I am feeling pain, right? I'm feeling pain that came from the past, or I'm feeling pain that's embedded in my nervous system, meaning that you stay in a grounded awareness with the experience rather than going into overwhelm and getting lost in the story of it, right? Or this pain means X, Y, and Z. I'm never going to be happy. I'm never going to find love, right? You actually stay grounded and centered. Can I feel my body? Can I be in the experience of the pain, but without getting overwhelmed by it or shut down by it? And as soon as you start getting overwhelmed or shut down, right, you actually switch to something grounding. You switch to something resourcing, which can be
to regulate your nervous system.
Yeah. Exercise, going out in nature. I used to smell essential oils. I had this set of essential oils, something as simple as that.
Eating fruit.
Really grounding. Yeah, something healthy for you. Drinking tea, talking to a friend, like a good friend. All of those things can pop you back out, right? And so this idea is to actually learn to slowly, somatically digest and meet your own pain or whatever's there at a pace that works for your nervous system. And exactly what you said, it usually takes longer than you think. When I first started digesting my sexual trauma, I was like, I'm going to do this faster than any human's ever done it. I'm giving myself 3 months to get over a childhood of anguish and hell. And I met this woman who was like, when I first started feeling my sexual trauma, I basically laid face down on the carpet for 5 years. And I got up after that 5 years, and I've been great since then. And I was like, 5 years. I would say it took me a good fucking 10 years of hitting it. And I had a great time in those 10 years, right? I still partied, played, studied tantra, taught workshops, all of that. But if I was being honest, my nervous system was still dominated by the reality of my childhood trauma. It took 10 years for me to consider myself a joyful person, to actually experience this moment.
True unadulterated joy.
Yeah, independent of the pain of my childhood. But like, what else was more worth doing during that time?